So hello everyone. In this talk, I want to show some basics about how to generate some events and notify components in the LibreOffice that something was changed. Because yes, I talked recently with Darshan, and I think it might be useful for people who are not familiar with the LibreOffice code. Yes, and first I will start with how we can store some data or settings maybe in the core. We can use that for adjusting the UI or changing the functionality. For example, we can disable some features or enable some special mode, like some compatibility feature, or maybe adjust some UI settings like dark mode. So in general, we store the application settings in many places, and we can say they are updated at few stages, because we have some defaults, and then there is also user profile, which is created by the user, and it saves the modifications which were made in the past by the user. And on top of that, we can add also our LibreOffice Kit settings. But we have to remember that in case of Collabora Online, the basic settings and user profile are immutable, so they are always the same when we restart the Kit process. If we open new document or the same document, but after everyone closed the previous session, we will get the same initial values. We will not have any modifications from previous session because we don't have database. Yes, and also we provide some APIs for integrators to inject some UI settings when we open the app. But in this talk, I will talk only about the core part. So yes, and also file can also contain some settings apart of the content of the document itself, because there are some special custom properties which we can put there to remember, for example, for the same file, some settings. Yes, so in LibreOffice, the application settings are stored in the register, which we can find in Office CFG module. It contains a lot of files, XML files, which some of them are schema describing the possible settings, and some of them are just data, the defaults. We can access them using the UI, using the options dialog. For example, like on this picture, I have the language settings for the user, and also we have the expert configuration dialog. I think it's under the advanced section, and it provides some editor where we can manually change different settings, which are maybe not accessible using the UI. And here, for example, I searched for quick editing setting. We can see the tree of properties, and on the right side there is some code which uses the same setting. As you can see, it's also under the Office, Impress, MISC, test, text object, quick editing, and we can modify this way the register in the code. So if user changes some settings, we have a file in user directory. If you have local development build of LibreOffice, it's by default in the user, and we can find XML file there, which is called registry modifications, and it contains all the differences between the defaults and what user set. In Collabora Online, we as I said, we don't have that functionality because after we change that, we forget that and we open fresh environment next time. But we do some modifications of this register on document load, and it is done in the desktop module init file. There is some function allow initialize where we do different adjustments for specific for LibreOffice Kit. We use different options. We pass from the Collabora Online server, and we set up all we need in Collabora in the core. For example, the important piece is language, which can be different for different users, and it depends which language we have set. We can have, for example, different units by default in different places. So it's very important to set up that. And also, I said we can store some things inside the documents. The example of that is the Zotero plugin, which is used for citations, and we can as I know, it uses the custom properties, which we can see inside the file properties dialog in the tab custom properties, where we can set up different as it is called custom properties. So later they are saved inside the file, and when we open it again, we will find the same properties. Yes, and of course we can still keep some temporary data which are valid for the current session, or maybe not session of single user, but the session, how long the document lives on Collabora Online server until all the people will leave and we will close the document. And it depends on the scope. What do you want to do? Because sometimes you don't need to provide some different values for different users, or it can be some global value. Then we can save that in, for example, register if it's some setting which already exists, or maybe in the module, like we have this SC mod class, which, or maybe that's probably the function which returns the pointer, but there is some class for the module for calc, and we can probably save something there. We can also save something inside the file model. There are classes for every type of document. Like here I have example of Impress document. And if we need something which is per view, per user, then the best place probably is something related to SFX view shell, because that is the object which stores the information about the one view. And also, I know there is something called grabback, which is more about the import and export of different file formats, and it can be used for some interoperability problems where, for example, we don't support some feature, but part of the original file we want to save and re-export. I hope it's correct, but because I didn't work with that, but I know there is something like this where we can temporarily save something for later. And yes, if something was changed, probably we will want to notify other views that it was changed, or even in our view, we want to update some components, for example, buttons in the sidebar, or maybe some other components, and it would be useful to broadcast that. So we have, and it would be good to not trigger update of the whole document or reload all the tiles, because it wastes the power, and also performance can be very bad. So it would be useful to only call the inform the specific components which need the information. So the best way to do this is via some event broker, which will later inform all the listeners which were registered for this specific case. We have a lot of different listeners and broadcasters in the core. I will mention a few of them. Oh, I see that I reordered the slides. Yes, so we have different listeners for different cases. For example, some of them can listen for command state update or SFX2 slot update, for document model change or VCL widget update. We can also attach listeners to different classes. For example, if we can use that to update some UI components, like if we select some text and it's bold, then we want to highlight the bold item in the sidebar. That's the useful thing we can do with broadcasting the command state change. Yes, and probably that's the most popular case. We want to inform about the command changes, and it's done already in the core automatically, but we don't send all the command updates to the online. And to enable new command to be sent to online, we have to do some changes. First place where we have to look is the desktop module, where we have this init file in which we have different functions we call when we create session or load the document. And there is a list in doc ini commands, where we have list of commands which will be sent when we load the session. So just after user opens the app, he will receive updates for current state of all these commands. And to enable automatic sending of command state updates to the online, we have also the other file in SFX2, ctitm, in which we have interceptor, which listens when some commands are changed, and then it sends the message to the online. In the past, we had to manually change the code and maybe create some message we want to send, but recently I think Mike changed that, so it has this nice list above in which we can just define the command name, and there is a bunch of different functions we can use which already send interesting data, like if it's Boolean value, it can send true or false, or maybe it can send both the value and if it's disabled or not. If something is not a command, the other useful thing is the SFX broadcaster and SFX listener. Our class can inherit from this listener and register itself in some broadcaster, and then we have different events defined on which we can receive the update. The list of different types of events related to this listener and broadcaster are in the file where we can find SFX hint. Here in the top right corner, we see some of them, but the list is very long. And on the bottom, we see the notify function implemented in toolbar button color updater. This is the class which inherits from this SFX listener, and this is the method which will be called by the broadcaster when event occurs. And as we can see, we check the ID of the hint, what type of event it was, and for example here, if color was changed, we do some updates. Also, we have the different listeners in our interfaces. For example, there is X status listener, which is used a lot in framework module. Framework module is used in toolbars and I think sidebar too. So if we have some more complex items in toolbars, like buttons with drop down and maybe some additional state visible on that icon, probably we will use that. And here is the example implementation in style toolbar controller, where we can get some update, and the method is status changed, where we get event data and we can do something about that item. In this example, I see the item can be checked or enabled. Also, when we have the raw VCL widgets, we can also get some notifications, which can be useful, for example, when we switch the dark mode or light mode. There are some functions we can we can use for that, like state changed, and we have different types of events on which we can do something, like when it's initially shown, or if it's visible, or it was disabled or enabled. But more useful are the JS dialog updates for the Collaborate Online. This is layer above the VCL implementation of widgets, and we migrated the dialogues to that. So now we have set of standard widgets defined in this file VCL world hxx, and inside we have different interfaces which are used by JS Dialog Framework, so to automatically inform the online about the updates in the widgets. So you don't have to send manually any updates in dialogues. It should be done automatically, but you have to enable the dialog or the UI file in special file inside the VCL JS dialog enable. There is a list, and you can add UI file which should be enabled, and then events should automatically be sent. But of course, in some more complex cases, it requires some more coding. And what it does, it intercepts the methods between the dialog logic and the interface, weld interface of the widget. So if the function is called, we send the update to online. And of course, we have the custom callbacks for online if there is something about which we have to inform the online and doesn't fit to other workflows. Or maybe all the previous listeners at the end, they send the callback to LibreOffice Kit, because this is the main way how we pass data from the core. The list of different callbacks we have in LibreOffice Kit folder, and of course they are optimized. There is some logic which scans the queue of events, and we can also define which can be deduplicated. So we send only the latest one, and also there is a helper in SFX2 module, LibreOffice Kit helper, which has different functions defined, so we don't have to rewrite the same code everywhere, and we have ready functions for different kind of events, like sending status or notifying about the size of the document. And also there is some optimization which doesn't send the data directly to the queue, but rather it informs the queue that this callback should be updated. So if we have a lot of events of the same type in short period, we can just skip generating the JSON for them or other data. We just inform that this callback should be sent, and after we get to that place in the queue that we have to send that callback, we will get the get the data which are up to date at this moment, so we don't waste time before. Also, what is important, we can send these callbacks to all the views or only for some specific view. So it is also something we can do here. And I think that's all. It's just a short preview of different possibilities. I hope it can help for people who didn't do much work in the core, at least where to find different code pieces which might be useful. Yes, and do you have any questions, or maybe you know about other examples which can be used?
Mike,
I think
please.
Mike.
Yes, Mike, please.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation. I had one question on a slide that is called temporary data storing in core. I'm sorry, I don't remember its number. Yeah, this one. This appeared right after you told about immutable registry, and that's why I wanted to ask if this slide is meant as a workaround for the mutable registry, or is it just a list where different settings may be stored?
Yes. So that's the list of places where we can store some data which are useful during the session, or maybe not session of one user, but where we have opened one document in the Collabora Online, and we want to pass some data or new members of some data for later, or maybe share them between the users, or only for one user. So in that sense, it's temporary, because it's not for the LibreOffice development, but rather for LibreOffice for Collabora Online. In that case, that's.
Thank you very much. I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Andras, questions?
No, thanks.
Miklos, questions, tips?
Just a comment that, as Szymon, you mentioned, this interrupt grab bag is for mostly for importing information from OXML files, which then used by the export filter when we write the file back. So just as an example, for example, docx files have this automatic paragraph margin, which is like not really well defined what automatic means. And then on import, we try to guess what is the actual distance when automatic is meant. But when we write this value back to docx, we try to preserve this information, that it's not like just this is the value, but we also track this was automatic or not. And then this grab bag knows that it was automatic, so we don't write an exact value, but we write automatic. So yeah, it's used for things like this.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Miklos. Aaron, questions? Okay, Banobe, questions?
No questions right now. I will have to again, I think, go through the video on the weekend, yes, to understand some things better.
Okay, thank you. Oberam, questions? Kellen?
No question, I guess, but just at the start when you mentioned that these two different lists of commands in two different places, one in desktop and one in SFX, I think Attila has an outstanding patch just to put those two lists into the one file and change things so that there's like a list of all of the commands that we use, and then add some booleans to say which one of these two lists the command belongs to. So the location of this might change into SFX in the next few days. That's just worth mentioning, I thought. And that's it.
Oh, yes, nice that there will be one place.
Okay, thank you, Darshan, Elliot, Jaume, Joao, Justin. Questions?
No questions for me.
Okay, thank you, Mevan. Questions?
Yes. So I see that options are there per document. So that's how we implement the macro enabled, I'm guessing. So it's going to be interesting to see if we have other use cases for per document settings. It's just a reflection. And to add this, yeah, and something to extend perhaps this presentation would be how to pass to the GS side settings. So let's say you have don't know, like I don't have a use case to share, but it could happen that a certain file or in a multi-tenant setting, some the provider of col would have different settings for its interfaces, and that it would propagate through settings depending on the tenant. If that makes sense. So it's a use case I'm gonna need to work with for another thing anyway. So rather food for thought.
Yes, I think we have that in SDK about all this information which we can pass to JS site, so I didn't mention here. And for example, we use these UI defaults, which can adjust the highlight color for the user. And yes, I think even now some settings can be per different integrator who talks to the col.la server, but probably not these settings I mentioned here about the config, right? They are probably, yes, they are the same per col.la online server.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for this compliment. Yeah, I forgot about those.
Thank you, Mevan. As in the questions?
No questions. Thank you, Shimon, for the presentation.
Pedro, Pranam, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Skylar, questions?
No questions, thanks.
And Vivek, questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.